It's time once again to meet one of the listeners of High Performance. And instead of me reading out the message and telling the story, I think that Phil should probably tell his own story. So, Phil, thank you, first of all, so much for joining us. Obviously, this is a podcast, so people can hear it, they can't see it. But just to paint a picture, we're chatting over Zoom. You've got a couple of wings clearly on your T-shirt you're wearing. Behind you, I can see images of planes and helicopters and all sorts. And that is a nice way of introducing the life that you've enjoyed and lived. So would you mind sharing a bit of that story to start with our listeners?
Sure, it'd be my pleasure to do so. So I come from humble beginnings, somebody who has not been blessed with above average credentials in terms of physical or mental aptitude, but I'm someone who's been pretty gritty and determined. And some would say I've been able to achieve some quite extraordinary things. But I had a huge reality check. In 2014, I was on cloud nine. At the time, I was a combat helicopter pilot, doing really well in the RAF, racing up the promotion and the ranks. I had a wonderful family, a beautiful wife, Beth, and two gorgeous daughters, Isla and Bella. So life in terms of career and family was running on rails. And sporting wise, a hugely passionate sportsman, that was going really well. I was representing the Royal Air Force in triathlon and marathon, and life was as good as it got. Or so I thought. And I distinctly remember one weekend in 2014. On a Saturday, I'd got to fly at the front of the Queen's birthday fly past over Buckingham Palace. And then on the Sunday, it was Father's Day, which I spent with my girls. And we went to a triathlon, which I even managed to win and come across the finish line with my daughters. So I thought, this is as good as it got. And if someone had said to me, in 4 weeks' time, you'll be a crumpled heap, I'd have said, that's rubbish. It's ridiculous. I'm resilient. I've got this high performance thing nailed. But the truth was, it was just a thin veneer. And in the next 4 weeks, as a family, we discovered that Isla, my 22-month-old youngest daughter, had leukemia, and life unraveled. It was the most gut-wrenching experience. I felt wholly ill-equipped, just stood on the sidelines while young Isla walked this tightrope of life and death. And I felt I couldn't do anything about it. My whole life I'd been able to fix stuff, but I had to sit back and let the miracle workers from the NHS and charities step in. And so that is when I started to learn properly about high performance, properly about psychological resilience. And what happened from that point was I realized that my purpose was to use what I could do, which was, I guess, my sporting pedigree. And I wanted to celebrate each year Isla was in remission from leukemia, and set myself challenges right on the edge of the possible. And so each year I set a physical challenge, which scared me, it intimidated me, and it allowed me to connect with Isla, to understand her fear, her uncertainty, some of the pain, some of the suffering, and also to raise money for some of the incredible charities which supported Isla. And so it started this series of 5 challenges which connected me to my true purpose, connected me to my daughter, and really taught me about high performance. So I guess that's the story in brief, gentlemen.
Bloody hell. I mean, thank you for sharing so openly and candidly, Phil. I think it's just left me a little bit speechless. I think I'm interested in what you said there about you wanted to experience the fear that Isla had gone through in terms of the challenges you take on. Would you tell us a little bit about that fear and how long it lasts and how you sort of journey through it?
Sure. So I think when Isla got diagnosed, I thought I understood fear. I thought I had mastered it. I'd been deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan as a combat helicopter pilot. I thought I knew what terror was, but it was nothing. I was wholly ill-equipped, and I was just mortified at what lay ahead. So the challenges were a way of me to try and understand what poor Isla was going through. It was an opportunity for me to reframe what I was doing and think about what she was doing. So in the challenges, for example, in some of the runs or later became the big one, the row across the Atlantic, it was a chance to try and understand those first experiences she had. So the uncertainty of being in hospital, that alien environment, having 2.5 years of chemotherapy to try and understand what that meant and what she was going through, and just that unfamiliarity with that horrendous journey she went on. So for me, it was a way of sort of processing what she went through, but also connecting me, because at the time I felt I couldn't support her as a father. So it was something positive I could do in that terrible time in our lives.
And I think, Phil, that this resilience, this adaptability, this this desire to be able to deal with anything that comes our way, like we all have that, and we'd all love to develop those skills, but none of us want to go through what you and Ida and your family have gone through. So is there anything that you've learned from that period that you could share with us, a lesson about resilience and about that, you know, that adaptability that you've had to bring into your life, that we could all learn from without the trauma that you've clearly had to face as well?
That's a great question, Jake. And I often reflect back. I would never want anyone to experience what we've experienced as a family, but I wish they could see the world through our eyes. And I think my own experience was I naively thought I was bulletproof, utterly resilient, but I just had a thin veneer. That in reality, it was a thin veneer of resilience. And resilience is a lifelong journey. It's a project you've got to set yourself and constantly feed. So I think there's putting yourself in stretch. Yes, I think Ross Edgley calls it wintering the mind and body. So that absolutely is important. Getting comfortable, being uncomfortable. So in the military, we're very good at that. We stretch people in their training, in flying training, for example. It's like having your driving test every week. You're kept in stretch, and that is good. But what I found really worked was the network. I didn't realize the importance of a social network in terms of psychological resilience. And when I wasn't able to do anything, when Isla was suffering in hospital, when I could just sit on the sidelines, it was realizing actually the support of others is so critical to psychological resilience. That social network, calling on friends who came in with Meals on Wheels service, would call in the middle of the night, would come to the hospital and support us as a family. So that was the real learning point to me, that the importance of that social network in providing and supporting your resilience.
And we're all humbled by the fact that you've invited High Performance with us on some of these incredible journeys you've been on, Phil. Is there one particular message or lesson that you've taken from the interviews you've heard that have helped you?
So many. So the final challenge was a team challenge, and this was rowing across the Atlantic with 3 Royal Air Force colleagues, all avid fans of the podcast. And the whole way across, we were trying to reflect and see how some of the lessons apply to what we were doing. And I think ones which stand out. So one would be world-class basics and the compound effect. In the lead up to rowing across the Atlantic, we had to commit to a simple training regime, knowing that each day we weren't making that much progress, but that compounded over time. As long as we stuck to these disciplined world-class basics, it was going to lead to us being on the start line, fully equipped to take on a nearly impossible challenge. I think another one would be the importance of vulnerability. On the boat, we had nothing to prove to each other. All of us were combat pilots who'd served in theatres around the world. We didn't have to prove that we were, men of metal or stronger than anything. We didn't need to be Spartacus. We could be vulnerable. And that was hugely important, because there were times in that row where you were feeling utterly at your lowest ebb, and being able to talk it through and pull on the energy of the rest of the team was critically important. And I'd say the final one was purpose. Initially going into it, it was just my purpose, which was raising money, raising awareness for cancer charities, and connecting with Isla. But the whole team got on board with this shared vision, this shared purpose. And it was so powerful. And we definitely, the whole was greater than the sum of the parts, and that was due to this shared purpose. So these are all lessons which came out from your podcast, and being able to crystallize them, on the Atlantic was a really special moment for us.
Wonderful. And the most important question of all is, how's Isla doing now?
You're right, it is the most important thing. So Isla is 9 years old, nearly 10. She has defeated cancer, and that was last November. So she'd been in remission for 5 years. So after nearly 1,000 doses of chemotherapy, 20 plus blood transfusions, months in hospital, she's done it. And the best thing is, you'd never know. And she's my resilience role model. She epitomizes it. Never feels sorry for herself 1 second.
Wow. I think of the three of us, there's only one true high performer here, and it isn't the three of us.
Correct.
Amazing. Look, thank you so much, Phil, for coming on and sharing that story. And I know that will be so helpful for so many people. What a fascinating and amazing thing to come on and tell us.
Thank you, gentlemen. A pleasure to be here.
You.
And thanks for producing such a brilliant podcast.
Oh, thanks, Phil.
Love that. Amazing. Thank you so much. And give our love to the family and to Isla and everyone.
I will do, gentlemen. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Cheers, Phil. Enjoy your
And
weekend.
Phil, can I ask you which charities were really helpful?
So Starlight, that was the big one. It looks after ill and terminally ill children in hospital. It grants wishes, provides fun in a really sterile environment. So Starlight was the charity we got behind, because they really transformed our experience.
Brilliant. Well done, man. And thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Pleasure, gentlemen. I know you're busy. Happy Friday. Have a great weekend when you get there.
And you. Love to
Cheers,
all.
Phil.
Thanks, mate.
Bye,
All
mate.
right.